History on Capitol Hill. Public hearings begin in the impeachment investigation into President Donald Trump. How the White House is responding. Cardinal Pell update. Australia's highest court reveals whether it will hear the former Vatican treasurer's appeal for a conviction on clergy sexual abuse. Reaching out. American Catholic bishops discuss ways to evangelize to people who do not believe in organized religion. And a helping hand. We hear about contributions by Americans to the Vatican Museums. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, November 13th, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby. The impeachment probe against President Donald Trump goes public. House Democrats are laying out their case against the president during nationally broadcast congressional hearings. President Trump calls it all a hoax. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Wyatt. Witnesses say President Trump was crazy to withhold U.S. aid from Ukraine unless the country investigated his political rivals. But President Trump says these impeachment hearings only prove how important it is to drain the swamp.
Public testimony begins on Capitol Hill. Democrats allege President Trump abused his power and sought Ukraine's assistance for political gain.
The questions presented by this impeachment inquiry are whether President Trump sought to exploit that ally's vulnerability.
Today, Bill Taylor, the top U.S. diplomat to Ukraine, recounted what he thought upon learning President Trump was encouraging Ukraine to investigate the Bidens.
Withholding security assistance in exchange for help with a domestic political campaign in the United States would be crazy.
And George Kent, a State Department official, says there was more at stake if Ukraine's president didn't publicly announce the Biden investigation would begin.
The possibility of a White House meeting was being held contingent to an announcement.
Republicans say Taylor and Kent are caught in the Democrats' latest attempt to overthrow President Trump.
The Russia hoax has ended, and you've been cast in the low-rent Ukrainian sequel.
At an Oval Office meeting with the leader of Turkey, President Trump told reporters he has not been watching the impeachment hearings.
I'm too busy to watch it. It's a witch hunt. It's a hoax. I'm too busy to watch it, so I'm sure I'll get a report.
The president also released a video ripping on Democrats, saying they want to take away Americans' votes.
What's going on now is the single greatest scam in the history of American politics.
Before we heard from those two witnesses today, Republican lawmakers immediately pushed Democrats to hear in a closed-door session from the anonymous whistleblower. But Democrat Adam Schiff said we will do everything necessary to protect the whistleblower's identity. Wyatt?
White House correspondent Mark Irons reporting. Thanks, Mark. Joining me now from Capitol Hill is Congressman Jody Hice, Republican from Georgia. He's also a member of the House Committee on Oversight and Reform. Congressman, welcome back to the program. You've been critical of this impeachment inquiry and the Democrats' handling of it. What's your reaction to what you've heard today?
Well, you know, it's more of the same, quite frankly, Wyatt. I mean, we have, and you're right, I have been critical of this. It's a sham. It's a political theater. And quite frankly, we're seeing more of the same today. We literally have witnesses who have witnessed nothing. This is second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand information. And it is all, if you want the truth as to what happened between the conversation with the president and the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, all you have to do is look for the transcript. And by looking at the transcript, it's obvious there was no quid pro quo, there was no pressure, and President Zelensky on multiple occasions has confirmed that over and over.
You tweeted similarly to what you just said about these witnesses never witnessing anything at all. So then what do you make of the testimony? Is there any value here in today's testimony of the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State George Kent and the acting ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor?
Well, you know, I think, again, it's more of the same. What we have witnessed over the last couple of months, last 6 or 7 weeks, whatever it's been, is Adam Schiff in the basement of the Capitol with no transparency, in total secrecy, without allowing other members of Congress to be there, although it is not classified information. And we, as the minority, we've not been able to bring our witnesses there, being led by individual Adam Schiff, who has a clear bias against the president. who himself, by the way, has lied to the American people multiple times, even to the extent of creating a fabricated conversation between President Trump and Zelensky. And here he's leading this whole thing. It's absolute insanity what's taking place. And yet, I believe that Adam Schiff has used the last 6 or 7 weeks to really audition individuals who he believed now are ready to perform on the public setting to damage the president. And it is more political theater, just a little bit more out in the open, but it's still not a fair process, and it's not anywhere near a genuine attempt to find the truth.
The president has also been critical of Adam Schiff. President Trump says Democrats are calling witnesses to testify who don't support him specifically. Now, at the same time, he's not allowing members of his staff, like White House Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, to testify. Do you think now that we're having these public hearings, that could change? I mean, could that be helpful in presenting the president's side during these open hearings?
Well, we'll see what happens, but why, you know, the president, if anything is going to take place, whether it's the president or the American people or members of Congress, the truth is what matters. I mean, if we're going to go down something as significant, as weighty to our nation as an impeachment inquiry, then the least that ought to be expected is the truth. And yet we've not had any remote attempt to seek the truth. For example, where is the whistleblower? I mean, here's the individual who got this whole thing started, who just a matter of weeks ago, according to Adam Schiff, you would think this was the most important person in the world, until we find out that Adam Schiff and his staff coordinated with the whistleblower to get this whole thing off the ground. And now Adam Schiff is adamant that this individual is not going to be revealed who it is, let alone come before a hearing for public testimony under oath. But that type of thing is necessary if we're going to find the truth.
But we are keeping our eye on all the public hearings both today and in the days to come. Congressman Jody Hice, Republican from Georgia, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you so much, Wyatt. It's an honor to be with you.
Australia's highest court says it will hear Cardinal George Pell's appeal for his conviction of sexual abuse. The 78-year-old is the most senior Catholic clergy member to be found guilty of abuse. The decision gives Cardinal Pell his last chance at having the conviction overturned. He was sentenced last March to 6 years in prison. A lawyer for the father of one of Cardinal Pell's alleged victims says her client is extremely disappointed by the High Court's decision. The head of the Diocese of Buffalo, who is being investigated by the Vatican for his handling of clergy sexual abuse allegations, is speaking out against division in the church.
The call for us bishops especially, which is an important part of our identity, to be ministers of unity is, I think, a primary calling within our vocation. It is always that, but especially right now, where there is so much tendency toward fragmentation.
Bishop Richard Malone was speaking during a mass in Rome for all of New York bishops. They were in Italy as part of meetings with Pope Francis, which happen every 5 years. Bolivia has named an interim president, and Bolivians took to the streets to celebrate. Janine Áñez appeared before her supporters holding a Bible. The former senator declared herself the country's interim leader. She has 90 days to hold an election. Former President Evo Morales stepped down last Sunday following weeks of anti-government protests. Hong Kong police say the former British territory is on the brink of a total breakdown. They also defend their response to anti-government demonstrators.
One may ask, where did all these petrol bombs and weapons come from? Where were they made? How were they mobilized within such a short time? We have strong suspicion that the school was used as a weapon factory. These necessitate police response and the use of force.
Police and protesters battled on multiple fronts overnight at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Petrol bombs and fires lit the nighttime scene. The demonstrations have lasted more than 5 months. Israeli airstrikes hit Islamic militants in Gaza today. 23 people from the Palestinian territory were killed. Israel says it was responding after more than 250 rockets were launched at Israeli communities. Coming up, American Catholic bishops discuss ways to reach those who do not follow organized religion. And one bishop tells us about his initiative to fight for the unborn. A national third-party reporting system for allegations of abuse, neglect, or misconduct made against bishops could be activated by February. The U.S. Bishops' Conference made the announcement today. In September 2018, the Bishops' Executive Committee had initially proposed the system. To learn more about the third-party reporting initiative and how the bishops plan to handle accusations, visit CatholicNewsAgency.com. The stats are startling. A recent Pew poll finds for every one person joining the church, more than 6 leave. And more broadly, Pew finds a fifth of the country claims not to have a religion. American bishops this week are talking about how to bring people back to the church. Correspondent Jason Calvi joins us from the bishops' meeting in Baltimore.
They're starting to clear out here at the bishops' meeting in Baltimore. And as the bishops soon head back to their home diocese, there's many challenges ahead. Take, for example, the median age of those beginning to abandon their faith. It's 13. That's according to Georgetown's Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate. So this week, bishops have been talking about ways to bring their flock back.
Beauty is subversive. Beauty gets under your skin.
This U.S. Bishops video highlights 5 ways to bring people back to the church.
They might not believe all the words that they hear the church speak right now, but seeing something good done will speak to their heart.
Bishop Robert Barron suggests 1. Serving.
Studies show it massively. The more involved they are in this work, the closer they stay to the life of the church.
Number 2, beauty.
Look at the Sistine Chapel. Just look at the San Chapelle. Just read Dante. Just see how Flannery O'Connor's stories are working.
3, Bishop Barron says stop dumbing down the faith.
We got a smart tradition, and I think providing good answers to honest questions is a major part of accompaniment.
4 and 5 focus on the missionary possibilities of the parish and social media.
The people we're trying to reach are not naturally coming to us. We have to go out to them.
And American bishops speak about how to go out.
Help them to come to know Mary. She will lead them back to her Son. She will lead them back to the church.
In my experience with young people, they love a challenge.
A lot of the young people I talk to and run into are very taken with beauty when it's expressed in the liturgy, whether it be in the architecture, in the environment, in the sacred music. And I think we've been presuming a lot of things for a lot of years about what appeals to young people, and I think maybe we need to rethink some of that.
Our sacred architecture, the way we celebrate the Mass can be very attractive and draw people in. We've seen that on many of our campuses, both Catholic and secular campuses, where we have active Naaman centers.
That's Bishop Sean McKnight. He says one of the big problems right now is a lack of credibility because of the priest abuse scandal. He says to regain trust, the bishops need to be transparent and also invite the laity to play a role in the church. Wyatt?
Correspondent Jason Calvi reporting from Baltimore. Thanks, Jason. The chairman of the Bishops' Committee on Pro-Life Activities announces an initiative meant to help parishes assist pregnant women in need at the local level. He's inviting his fellow bishops to join the nationwide effort. Archbishop Joseph Naumann, chairman of the USCCB Committee on Pro-Life Activities, joins us now from Baltimore to tell us about the program. Your Excellency, welcome in. This initiative is called Walking with Moms in Need. Tell us about the program and the ways in which parishes across the country will support it.
Yes, thanks, Wyatt. Thanks for this opportunity. Our desire is to awaken within our Catholic community an even heightened commitment to support moms in need and to walk with mothers. And so we want our parishes to be what Pope Francis calls these islands of mercy, and that any woman that's experiencing a difficult pregnancy would look to our parishes and would know that she could go to our parishes to receive help. And what we want this year to do is help our parishes become more aware of the services that are available through the church and through other organizations in the community, and to be these conduits to really help link women with those services so that no woman feels that they face a difficult pregnancy alone.
Well, I hope you could expand a little bit more on that, Your Excellency. How important is it for all of us as Catholics to remind women of the resources their local church and the church as a whole can provide when they need this kind of support?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's at the heart of our mission to make Christ's love tangible for people. And so it's really responding to that mandate that Jesus has given to us to really recognize him in those that we're privileged to help and serve in need. And so no woman should feel that she's isolated and alone and without a community really to surround her with love and support. And we think our parishes are well positioned. They're everywhere across the country. And in those communities, there's a lot of human gifts and talents and financial and other resources that can bring to bear to help these women, whether their needs are quality medical services, whether it's a place to stay, whether it's the skills to acquire a good job to provide for herself and for her soon-to-be child. So our parishes, we really think we're trying to awaken this giant of our parishes to be there as these places of where Christ's love and mercy is experienced in very real and very tangible ways.
And of course, this program comes as the year of service officially begins in March of 2020. That coincides with the 25th anniversary of St. John Paul II's encyclical Evangelium Vitae, the Gospel of Life. How significant is all of that?
Well, yes, that was part of our inspiration as well as we look at this 25th anniversary of St. John Paul II's great encyclical on the Gospel of Life. And part of what he did in that encyclical was challenge us as a church to be there to support women that are facing difficult circumstances, often beyond their own control. And it's really into a response of living out that gospel of life that we're attempting in this year. And it's not just about doing these things for 1 year and then it's over with, but it's really elevating these services for the years to come as well, and to take them to a higher level and to sustain and grow that level as the years go by. But the anniversary gave us really the impetus to do this initiative at this particular moment.
Well, of course, we'll be following the program and following up with you on it. I want to switch gears, Your Excellency. Yesterday, there were vigorous interventions among your fellow bishops on the preeminence of abortion as a social concern. As head of the pro-life committee for the bishops, what's your perspective on that question?
Well, obviously, I mean, I think it is the preeminent moral issue that we faced in our time. And actually, the support was very strong. When you look at the vote for that, it was overwhelmingly in favor of that language. That's not to say that there aren't other moral issues that are extremely important, that we care about deeply, and that we work on as well. So it's not a zero-sum game, but it is saying, for the reasons that are mentioned in that statement, because abortion attacks directly human life, because it happens in the sanctuary of the family, so it really destroys the bonds, the most important bond in society between a mother and a child. And because of the numbers, there's no other human rights issue really that affects those numbers. 60 million plus abortions since 1973 and 1 million annually happening in our country. So for those reasons, it really does have a preeminent priority for us as a bishops' conference.
It continues to be such an important issue also, especially in this day and age. Archbishop Joseph Naumann, chairman of the USCCB Committee on Pro-Life Activities, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for the opportunity. An important part of this is communications, is communicating that we're there for people. So we're grateful to EWTN and all that you do to help to communicate the church's message. Thanks.
Up next, Pope Francis condemns the rise in attacks on Jewish people. And the Vatican Museums honor the contributions made by Americans. An iconic Catholic basilica in Venice has been flooded. Water in the historic canal city has reached the second highest levels ever recorded. It flooded St. Mark's Basilica, raising concerns over the destruction of its mosaics and other artwork. The city's mayor says the church sustained serious damage. More than 85% of Venice is flooded. Pope Francis condemns the recent rise of anti-Semitism.
Fratelli e sorelle, questo non è né umano né cristiano.
At his weekly talk with pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father said the persecution of Jews is neither human nor Christian. He also calls the Jewish people our brothers and sisters. The U.S. Embassy to the Holy See and the Vatican Museums are hosting an exhibit honoring American contributions. The exhibit features 3 paintings from Carlo Crivelli, a 15th century Venetian painter. They were recently restored thanks to American donors who are part of the Patrons of the Arts, a group who financially support the restoration of the Vatican Museum's vast art collection. The exhibit commemorates 35 years of diplomatic relations between the United States and the Holy See. Father Kevin Lixey, International Director of the Patrons of the Arts in the Vatican Museums, joins us from Rome. Father Kevin, tell us what makes these 3 Crivelli pieces so important. In other words, why were these 3 in particular chosen to be restored?
Well, we restore many pieces in the Vatican Museums, and among all the pieces we restored as patrons, I think these 3 Crivellis were put together because they're unique to have 3 pieces from the same artist or the same school in the same room is a beautiful opportunity for people to compare, to contrast, to see them all together. And so all the many pieces that the patrons restore year after year, these have been in the last 5 or 6 years recently restored, one just fresh out of the restoration lab as of yesterday. And so it's an opportunity to bring them all together to kind of to compare, contrast, to focus the spotlight, we could say, on Crivelli and his school.
And they look beautiful. We're seeing one of those pieces behind you now. In general, Father Kevin, how do you guys at the Vatican Museums choose which art pieces need to be restored?
So of all the pieces of art, whether it's a painting, a marble statue, or maybe a vestment or a tapestry, these are all a process that year after year, each curator will bring things to the director, Barbara Yatta of the Vatican Museums, and she will go through a list of what we call our wish book, right? A list of needs, wants, desires of maybe the most urgent restorations that are needed. And then they are kind of put together into what we call a wish book. And then that is published each year, and our donors then can go out and select maybe each chapter, or a certain region can say, hey, we'd love to do this Madonna. And so how much does it cost? How can we raise the funds? And so that's kind of the modus operandi year after year of 35 years of the Patrons of the Arts in the Vatican Museums at work to bring these beautiful masterpieces back to life.
That sort of leads into my next question, Father. Tell me more about your organization here within the Vatican Museums, the Patrons of the Arts.
Yes, the Patrons of the Arts in the Vatican Museums is basically a fundraising branch of the Vatican Museums for 35 years. It started in the United States, especially in New York and California in 1983. And since then, patrons or benefactors have stepped up to support the Vatican in its work of restoration in particular.
It's so fascinating to hear how much work goes into restoring these and how much effort is put into this. As you know, so many Americans support the Patrons of the Arts financially, but apart from just the financial support, how do you see Americans' role in supporting the Vatican Museums?
Well, I think, first of all, there's such a wealth of treasures of antiquity, especially sacred art in Rome and in Italy in general. So I think it really offers them a unique opportunity to partake of that, right? It's not the museum of their backyard, like many fine institutions in the United States, but this becomes really a pilgrimage. A lot of times they will come in as a group, they will see the Vatican Museums after hours as a group and really experience the beauty of the Sistine Chapel or the very interesting things that happen in the restoration labs themselves. The patrons are able to go down and to see that firsthand. And so I think it becomes more of a spiritual journey, also an artistic window into the world of restoration, which is fascinating. And also it's a link to the church. I think for many it's a chance for them to draw closer to Mother Church, especially Rome, and the patrons offer them a beautiful way to see Rome, and especially the Vatican, from the point of view of a patron.
Well, it's always wonderful to hear about how the art and spirituality and the church all come together. Father Kevin Lixie, International Director of the Patrons of the Arts in the Vatican Museums, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
So many beautiful works of art in the Vatican. And that concludes our newscast for tonight. With the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll be back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.